If you're trying to build a part-time or even a full-time career as a music professional, then this video is either going to frustrate you or it's going to explain exactly why things have been so difficult for you recently. Because one of the biggest mistakes that most musicians make is just like Mark Twain put it. It's not what people don't know that gets them in the most trouble. It's what they know that just ain't so. And as someone who's been a music professional since I was 15 years old, I thought the music business was going to be a certain way. I thought it was going to set itself up so I just got to focus on the art and maybe playing some shows and going into the studio, and then everything else would kind of be handled by somebody else. And a lot of those misconceptions got me punched in the face over and over again by the music industry. And so as you watch this video, you're going to begin to uncover the misconceptions that hold most musicians back. And then by the end of this video, you'll begin to see the exact framework that I've used to generate over 6 figures as an independent musician. So let's dive into how we could start combating this misconception. So the first myth I want to tackle is the myth of delegation. So what happens is a lot of artists will see another artist who's at a certain point in their career, a certain stage of development, you could say. And they say, well, they have a manager, they have a record label, they're on the radio. Clearly, if I want to be a success as an independent musician, I've got to get all these things, right? Well, it's funny, if you got a label, you would cease to be an independent musician. But you get the idea. We see these artists with certain team members around them, and we assume that's how it's going to be for us. And that's how it is default for every musician who's doing well. Well, that's the thing. What does doing well mean? Doing well is pretty subjective, right? You could see a musician who's an independent artist who's making $50,000 a year from their music, and some people would be like, dude, that's a complete success, and some people would say that's a complete failure, right? It's a very subjective thing. But here's the idea. We see artists at that one stage, and we think, I need all the same things. I was actually watching someone who studies businesses and helps them out at different stages. His name is Ryan Deiss. He started a company called Digital Marketer years and years and years ago. Kind of one of the OGs of understanding businesses in the modern age. And one of the things he talked about was he was doing a comparison list. And this is for businesses that were making $500,000 a year. So stop. Imagine for a moment you're making $500,000 a year. You probably, if you're thinking that, you're like, man, dude, I'm killing it, dude. I've probably got all the trappings. You know, I've probably got like a chief marketing officer that's over here doing this. I've probably got a COO over here doing this, a CFO, and all the other C-suite whatchamacallits. I've probably got all that stuff going. I'm making $500K a year as a musician. I'm doing pretty freaking amazing, right? Well, even Ryan Deiss was looking at it and like, if you're making $500,000 a year, you don't need a COO. You would be better off going to an industry conference. And I found that so fascinating because it's like, as musicians, we assume that once you cross a certain threshold, you just have to have things. But the reality is you don't. You know, I hear certain music marketing professionals that talk about like, well, yeah, you just got to get signed up with the label. It's just the most logical thing to do. You don't have to. And the reason a lot of artists opt out of that is just simply because they don't want to develop a new skill set, which I'm not judging. Some artists don't want to develop a new skill set. Great. But a lot of artists make that decision of like, well, I don't want to develop a new skill set. I'll hand it off to the record label and then get screwed royally. So to avoid that situation, we have to understand things in a stage of processes, okay? When you're in the very independent coming up phase of your career, it does not make sense for you to have a manager, to have a record label, to have a radio campaign manager. Those things are too expensive. I'm going to say this. I don't even think you should have PR, because PR is what you get once something blows up, not something you get to blow you up. Okay? I made that mistake. I paid for PR back in the day and it didn't really do anything. I loved the person who was our PR agent, but it didn't really do anything tangible for our career, with all due respect to him. So that's the thing. We think we need things because we saw our heroes do it, but some of our heroes didn't even know why they got those things. They were just kind of like, yeah, this is how it works, and you just kind of fall in line, right? And we know what happens when artists just kind of go along with the flow with the music industry. It can lead to some pretty bad stuff. So a lot of musicians think of themselves almost like a chef. They're like, if I'm a chef, I just sit there in front of my ingredients every day, and I'm preparing wonderful dishes for people to enjoy. Except that's not what being a chef is like at all. Usually, you've got a kitchen full of other team members, other like sous chefs and cooks that are underneath the chef, right? So you got to manage the people. So you're kind of a manager at the same time, right? But also you got to know what kind of inventory you've got on all your different ingredients. You got to know how much all those ingredients cost, so what you can sell it for, right? So you're not just a chef. And in the same way, with a musician, you're not just a musician. And the musicians who think to themselves, I'm just a musician, are falling into a dangerous trap. And the danger is the word just. Yes, you are a musician. Yes, musicians have natural proclivities towards being creative, and business stuff doesn't come naturally. But you know what else didn't come naturally for most people? Learning how to, ride a bike. Learning how to play a sport. Learning your instrument for the first time, I think, unless it's vocals, for most people didn't come naturally, right? You had to sit there with the guitar and suck at it long enough to get good at it. So the idea that, okay, I'm just going to be a musician and I'm just feeble old me, I can't handle anything business related, is not true. How many false beliefs do we walk around with that are programmed by other people? For example, when I was growing up, there was this thing called AR points, accelerated reader points, where you would read a book, go take a test on the little computer, and you'd get points based on how many questions you got right. Well, I remember year after year after year, all my friends were getting these awards of how many AR points they were getting, and I wasn't really getting any awards. I wasn't getting very many points. And so my counselors just started feeding this belief to me. I guess you're just not a reader. Yeah, I guess you're just not a reader, Dax. You're just not a reader. And they said that over and over and over and over again until it just became this belief that was installed into my brain. And then I started noticing my apprehension to do things that were like difficult from a reading perspective. And it's kind of like I shot myself in the foot before I even started the race. And so then I had the day where I had to check myself and say, is it really that I'm not a reader? Or is it just that no one's ever tried to actually show me something that's interesting to read? Something I'd want to read so I can understand the value of reading? No one ever thought about that in the modern education system in America. God forbid that would happen. But what I did is I went to a bookstore, bought some books online that were used, and one of those books was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, and that book literally changed the trajectory of my life. And so if I had held on to that false belief, who knows where I'd be right now? Who knows what other false beliefs I would have adopted in that web? Because false beliefs usually don't travel by themselves. Misery loves company, as we say. So usually we've got a few different false things that hold us back. And one of the things is that I'm just an artist. I'm not really built for that and all these kind of things. That's not true. No human being was built to, for example, play guitar, play drums, piano. That was something you had to take your natural appendages and figure out how to organize them in a way that produced sound, right? It wasn't just natural. You had to learn how to do it. And just like anything is learnable as long as you're now open to being, able to learn it. If you think you can, I know it sounds trite and cliche, if you think you can, you can. And if you don't think you can, then you won't. So that was me with reading. When I thought, I'm just not a reader, I failed whatever I tried to do reading-wise. When I told myself I am a reader, I started retaining knowledge. Because I changed the story, and therefore my brain was more elastic. Therefore, I was able to learn new skills. Your brain has as many neurons as there are stars in the sky. I heard that from Richard Bandler in an interview that we did recently. And so that means there's so many different ways that you could do something. And so for you to think I am just a musician is to say almost like I'm only just this one neural pathway. No, you don't have to just be a musician. You could be a musician who's competent at other things outside of just music, right? You probably are that right now. You're probably competent at plenty of other things outside of music. Or even if it's just a handful of things, you are living proof that you can be a musician and other things, right? Now, maybe you don't like the other things that you're good at. Maybe it's like a job you have and you develop skill and you don't really like the job. I understand. But you've just had evidence now presented in front of you that you can be more than just a musician. So now let's just apply that to learning the skills that allow us to be a full-time musician or even a part-time musician, okay? So we have to change the belief about us as an artist, like, oh, I'm just an artist. No, you're actually, if you're trying to become a professional musician, you're a small business, fundamentally, right? And you're the captain of the ship. So if you look at the definition of entrepreneur, it's someone who owns a business or businesses. Well, guess what? We just found out that's you. And takes on greater than average risk in order to do so. Does that sound like a musician to you? Sounds like a musician to me. So not only do we fit the definition of entrepreneur, one of the sub-definitions of entrepreneur actually says a promoter in the entertainment industry, which we fall under. Isn't that kind of interesting how even the roots of the word entrepreneur, it's a French word, have roots to promoters in the entertainment industry that we reside in? I think that's crazy. So if you look at it, people like Franz Liszt or even Mozart are great examples of we look back and we just remember the music. Now, this should be a little thing to really take this in mind. We look back and all we really remember from Mozart is the music. But guess what he did? He marketed his ass off, right? He was out there pitching aristocrat after aristocrat after aristocrat for a commission for operas and like creating music. He was doing, not guitar lessons, I almost said guitar lessons. He was doing piano and music lessons. Right? So he was doing a lot of the side hustles that modern musicians are doing right now in the freaking like classical era. Think about that for a moment. But we don't remember, we don't go back and go, yeah, Mozart wrote some pretty, crazy, amazing music that was, a prodigy level for his age and all that kind of stuff. And it's transcended hundreds and hundreds of years of listening to music. But, he was kind of falling prey to that hustle culture of the time. No one gives a crap. Like, you know what I'm saying? No one gave him some, oh, he was a try-hard. He was trying so hard. He was so cringe, going around begging for commissions from aristocrats. It's like, well, guess what? He got them. You know what I'm saying? And guess what he is right now? He's Mozart. So we can't sit there and say, like, oh, I don't want to market myself. I don't want to present myself in this kind of way because then that's going to somehow taint the art. No, it's not. It's going to get you fans, and then your fans are going to forget the marketing that even got them interested in the first place because they're just going to remember what? The music. And guess what happens? You do that to a big enough scale, no one's going to remember how you became big. They're just going to remember the music. Now, don't go Kim Kardashian on it just because they're not going to remember. Do it nobly, but good Lord. But you see the idea here. We don't need to feel shy about getting in front of a camera and marketing our music and being cringe, because guess what? Once you figure it out and you figure out the right combination of content and headline with your music to find your fan base, it's not going to matter if you made a bunch of cheesy videos. The definition of an overnight success is they didn't see the 10 years before the overnight. So what are we worried about? Being seen, like no one's checking out the blow, what happened to the blow up and judging us and all that kind of stuff. No, they just remember the music, okay? Now, what do you focus on? Now that you understand, okay, I get that I'm entrepreneur, I'm more entrepreneur than just like a hobbyist musician, right? Or entrepreneurial, I guess is the right word. What do I focus on? I share this in a few videos, but I think it's an important principle, especially if you're new and you haven't heard it before, which is something called the Pareto principle, otherwise sometimes called the 80-20 principle. It's the idea, think about it this, of all of Mozart's music, of all of his music, 80% of what you hear is only 20% of what he wrote. Of all the music that's on the radio right now, it's not even 20%. You could say that's probably an even smaller distribution nowadays. But you get the idea, this kind of distribution of 80-20, right? Well, then you could start reverse engineering that to think, okay, if I have to focus on some other things outside of music, what do I focus on? And if I'm going to focus on it, do I have to become as big of an expert at those things as I am at music? No. You've probably crossed the threshold of learning past the 20% of information about music and your craft and started leading more into that other 80% of information. So by definition, you have crossed into that kind of expert level of being a musician. However, when it comes to marketing, sales, right? How do we actually attract people in there and communicate effectively? Those things, you can look at the 20% of information in those fields that yields 80% of the outcome that we're looking for. So you don't have to be a master expert in all these things. I would just focus on 3 things. If you're a subscriber of mine, you better know what these things are. If not, there's no blame. You're going to learn it right now. It's a very simple framework. In fact, it actually is an easy acronym to remember from the context of what we've been talking about today. It's CEO. But that doesn't stand for Chief Executive Officer. It stands for content, emails, offers. Okay? That little 3-prong formula, you focus on those 3 things. How do I learn the 20% of information about content that leads to 80% of the outcome? How do I learn about emails? People are like, what, emails? Is that old technology? Well, it's on track to make $17 billion by next year, so I would not say it's a dead technology. It's a direct communication vehicle for you to talk to your fans. Wouldn't that be valuable? Don't you think that would be worth looking into? And then offers. How do we sell something? What's the 20% of information we need to know about creating something of value that would lead to, not 80% of people buying, but 80% of the result we're looking for, right? That's what you focus on outside of the music, obviously. If you're not focusing on the music, then what are you putting in the content? What are you talking about in the emails? And what are we positioned with the offers, right? You have to be a songwriter and putting out music first and foremost, right? But once you've done that, that's usually the question. It's like, okay, I've put all the work, I've ignored everybody out in the world and just made this piece of art that means something meaningful to me. Now what do I do? Okay, now you focus on the content. How do I create enough attention and influence that I can move people into the emails, then communicate with them, build more influence, and affinity is the word. Then how do I present them with just a natural, logical decision to support me? And if you can start building that, you could start building part-time revenue or even full-time revenue from being a music professional, okay? So hopefully through this video, you've been able to uncover some of the misconceptions that have potentially been holding you back and some of the ways of looking at your music career that have made you go slow where others have been speeding up, okay? So if you'd like to learn a little bit more how to implement this system for your music business one-on-one, I have a free call that you can get by clicking the link in the description to see if I could actually help you implement this for your music business, to see if it's a good fit. Otherwise, subscribe, hit the like button, all that good YouTube-y stuff. I guess there's a hype button. Hit that too now. And I look forward to seeing you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.